you set your mind on doing something, anything, you can probably do it. May not be perfect, may not be the best, but you can do almost anything. The beauty of being quote unquote retired now is you're truly in charge of how you're going to spend your time. And your time and my time is our most precious asset. Setting a vision of how do I want to be able to set up my life to be able to have more freedom in the future, or I'm going to delay doing some of these things. I'm a big believer in that.
One of the things I reached out to Aunt Sally, your wife, and asked, what do you admire about Uncle Chris? And she listed 26 things, which most people list one, but Aunt Sally was like, she was kind of like, holy cow, this is quite an assignment here. So she listed out a number of them, and they all were kind of listed in a really cool way that led up to the last thing that she really, really emphasized was, and lastly, Chris just gets shit done, which I thought was such a cool thing. She wrote it back to me in an email and she put it in bold lettering, and I thought that was really amazing. And so I just kind of wanted to start with an open-ended question on why do you think that's such an important quality for a father and a husband and a man, and why do you think Aunt Sally emphasized that point with you?
You know, I'm not sure if I know if it's an important quality for other people. It's for me. It's important because oftentimes what you're getting done is tied to a commitment that you made to someone or to something. So delivering on what you said you would do, to me, is kind of like the ultimate fulfilling of your word. So to me, that's kind of it. And well, Sally probably says it because she's known me for 35 years. And so seeing me in a work environment, family environment, our personal relationship, our relationship with my kids, my relationship with my grandkids. So when something comes my way and I embrace it and think it's something, yep, I want to help do that, then you want to get it done.
Where do you think that embodiment of the living to your word and getting things done came from? Do you think that came from growing up on the farm or other examples in your life? Or
I think, honestly, one of the people who was a mentor to me, and honestly, there are people in your lives, right, that are mentors. They never knew it necessarily, but we had a family friend who was also our local wrestling coach to our community, and he was a teacher in our school. And one day we stopped by his house, and he was building this cool A-frame house on the outskirts of Campbellsport back in the 70s. And we walk in there, and he is building a stone fireplace. And I'm like, Mr. Marking, how did you know how to build a stone fireplace? And he said, well, I talked to a guy, and I paid him $25 to show me the best way you lay stone. And so I learned how to do it, and so I'm doing it. And just that ability to, if you set your mind on doing something, anything, you can probably do it. May not be perfect, may not be the best, but you can do almost anything. And that message that he showed then and that he actually showed as a coach and as a teacher just stuck with me.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you brought that up because oftentimes I'll talk about lessons I've learned from you to other people, and I feel like I really was able to learn a lot when I stayed at the farm during COVID.
When you were my mentor.
When I was your mentor. That's right. Yeah, when I took your coach's place. And
that's right. Exactly.
Mentor.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
For those who don't know our family, this sarcasm is very unstrong. So definitely was no mentor.
And actually, just I'd add.
Yeah.
My dad was a wonderful, just super outgoing. He's truly the sell the ice cubes to an Eskimo thing. But he, because of a struggle with alcohol, was not great on his commitments. So there were many times in my life, frankly, I was left somewhat disappointed by him not fulfilling something. And you kind of, as much as you learn from what to do, you also learn what not to do from people. And that was one thing that I was like, I definitely don't want to be doing that when I get older. So
Yeah.
that also was, frankly, is probably a pretty big influence as well.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible how you can see folks who live a certain way, and then that becomes a decision for you to not want to continue down that path, which is just as potent and strong.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, now in where you're at, what things have you learned that are definitely ways of life that you think you should continue to live by, or maybe words to live by? And then what are some that you've seen that are words that you should not live by?
You know, life is, you know, it's a series of stages where you have differing priorities that evolve and change over time, right? So early on, you're having fun, you're learning, you're doing fun things, and also in that process, you're learning. And then eventually, you got to get a job and you got to make a living, and then you get to choose what level and how do you want to live your life. What do you want to build around your life? Do I want to have a partner? Do I want to have a family? And whatever you're choosing will build on those responsibilities and or take away from them. And so along the way, right, you're earning a living. You're also raising kids potentially. And then even so, while I was working, you know, one of the things that was super important was my kids' activities was a huge priority. So if there was a soccer game or a cross country meet and it was at 3:00 somewhere, like I was going to go to that because that was a priority at that time. But also my job was super important, so I had to travel a fair amount. So now, as I'm not working in a corporate environment any longer, my family is a number one priority for sure, and I get to devote more time to it. So it was a priority before and probably my number one priority, but I couldn't devote as much time to it. Now I can devote more time to it, so I can spend more time now with my grandson. I can spend more time now with my grandson during a weekday than I could with my son. Which on one hand, you're like, man, that doesn't feel right. But on the other hand, well, that's just the reality of it. So I'm going to embrace and cherish the opportunity I have to spend that time with my grandson. And similarly, because of where I live, I have the opportunity now to spend more time with nieces and nephews. So I have that as like every year I have an annual, I set kind of, hey, what are the things I want to accomplish next year? And part of that is building relationships with my extended family. And same deal, 15 years ago, I didn't have the time. I'd have interactions and, you know, see them for an hour or two when they're all together. But now you can actually spend more quality time. So that's a focus and something I'm driven towards. With my partner, of course, Sally. And then my own personal, what are challenges that I want to take on? What do I want to learn that's new? What you know, what's going to be something that's going to push me or stretch me beyond what I've done before? So I have that as a key goal. And then I have personal goals around, you know, where I live and our family home and things like that. But family, partnership, and personal enrichment and challenge are probably where I put my primary goals and efforts now.
And it sounds like they shift depending on the stage of life that you're in.
Yeah, they shift, and also it's just some of the amount of time you can give them. So, yeah, there's things I don't worry about business, you know, the sales of the company I used to work for. I don't have to worry about that anymore. So I don't like wake up and like have to go look at, what happened yesterday. So like you get to set all that aside at some point. You might have new worries and new things that like, it's getting me kind of stressed out, but you get to devote your time and slice it differently.
You mentioned the goal setting and the personal goal setting, and then kind of having different priorities, and then thinking about that in the beginning of the year. And how subject are those priorities to change as the year goes on?
They definitely can change in that, hey, I was going to do some specific thing within it because something else came up that's a more important priority. So, you know, I had a goal last year of trying to vintage race at a new racetrack. I have a goal to try and be at a new racetrack every year. So I was going to go to some racetrack or go somewhere. But then Sally's mom's health was failing fairly rapidly. So we adjusted what we were doing, and we spent more time in California being with her family and being whatever sport we could. So setting that goal, that other personal goal aside, was easy. I still did other things that were a lot of fun and personally challenging, but being able to adjust and shift to then meet the goals that are the move as a priority that you did not foresee is something I think you want to do naturally.
Yeah, allow for some form of flexibility with things that come in.
And honestly, the beauty of being quote unquote retired now is you're truly in charge of how you're going to spend your time. And your time and my time is our most precious asset. We sometimes lose sight of that, but it is by far it is the thing we will never get any more of. You can do things, right, to be healthier and live a longer life. But at some day that it's done, your time is gone, your time to be interacting and doing things is just going to be gone. So how you choose to do it, it's all yours. And we're blessed to have it be all ours. There are people that may not be as fortunate and are struggling financially or health things that they just have such a hurdle in front of them. But I'm blessed not to have that. So how you choose and divide your time, it's ours, nobody else's.
It can be really difficult to remember that, and you can kind of get lost in day to day. How do you remind yourself, or what kind of reminds you that time is the most precious asset?
And honestly, you just have to. If you just watch what happens around you today, I'll share. My daughter had a friend whose son, at the age of 18, literally died a week and a half ago in a motorcycle accident.
Yeah.
And, right 2 weeks ago, nobody would have said that's going to happen to that family. Or, my wife's mom's gone. Or, when you see people, something happen to them or people pass away, it is a real reminder that our time here is finite. And if you just look around, you can see a reminder every single day.
Yeah.
So,
it kind of stops you in your tracks and realizes, holy cow, the point is to be with those you love.
Yeah.
And that, there's a lesson that you shared with my cousin, your nephew Mac, the other day, which I think is a cool connecting thread here, where you guys were working on some project and you guys had agreed to stop at a certain hour, I believe, or at some point. And then Mac, with a similar mindset that I am, was like, oh man, if we just, really push through this and stay for an extra 2 hours, then we could clear the whole thing. And then your imparting lesson was, Mac, I'll tell you something. There's always going to be more work.
Yeah,
there's always something for you to do.
Yes.
There's always something you to do. And then it was like, you can come back to this tomorrow, but we agreed upon a goal. And then that, and I know you so much more, so the listener will get clued in on this. But, when it seems like you have a set of non-negotiables that allow for so much of your life to flourish. So you end at the specific time, and sometimes maybe you go over, but you always will get in touch with Aunt Sally about, hey, just so you know, this is where I'm at, so that you can have the movie time, popcorn time, where you can hang out at the end of the day. But I think that a lot of folks, I don't know if this was similar in your generation, at 30s, but definitely right now, it feels that there's an obsession with really, pushing things so far, where it's like the point is to get the thing done, at all costs. Whereas like, hey, if you just stop, give yourself this time to relax, you have tomorrow. And just an observation. I don't know if you have a comment on that.
Yeah, I think it's the age-old tortoise and the hare thing, right? It's the could you just go through and like, man, I'm going to do this. I'm going I'm going to have this by this age. I'm going to do this by this age. I have this versus, you know what, I'm going to set again, I'm not setting aside spontaneity and doing things on impulse. I definitely do plenty of those things, but setting a vision of, hey, how do I want to be able to set up my life to be able to have more freedom in the future, or hey, I'm going to delay doing some of these things. And oftentimes that's fiscal, setting aside fiscal things that you spend so that you can give yourself the freedom to do things later. I'm a big believer in that. And again, I know it, and it's sort of like, it sounds like a counter of, oh, you know, you just shared this tragic story of an 18-year-old just died. Well, you know, how about you got to live for the day? You don't know when it's going to end. Yeah, you don't. But at the same token, we're probably all going to live good, generally long lives. And, you know, long could be 70, long could be 80, long could be 68. But you're going to live towards that end of life. So you kind of want to plan for that and like say, okay, what can I do now that's going to set me up for that? And right, the more you can think and just do some small things now, you will set yourself up incredibly to give and have all the freedom you want later.
What do you think are the small things that many people disregard that are maybe daily habits, weekly or monthly, you know, goals that folks ignore but then end up compounding greatly later in life, maybe late 30s, 40s?
Yeah, and I know this isn't a financial driven podcast, but frankly, saving and setting aside money when you are younger is like the difference maker. And it is, and it's such we're in a phase where people think, oh, to live a quality life, I need, like, I was listening to a podcast and like people now, you know, in their 20s now, you say, hey, what do you need to be successful? Like they're telling you they need millions and millions of dollars. It's like these crazy things and how much you need to make. And there's like this huge number. And the reality is just, it's not that. And if you actually make a decent living and you invest and save money early and regularly and set it aside, you'll be able to live your life, especially in your latter years when you want more time and freedom to do things, beyond what you thought you could. And it's the component of time.
I really like continuously hearing that, because I think some folks might, maybe in the folks in that podcast, they kind of look for this simple or maybe a not simple answer that deviates from kind of this, you know, timeless truth is that, hey, you know, save money and you know, think about the future self in many ways.
Yeah, there's this number that's something like, if you set $1 aside when you're 20, when you're 60, that dollar will have grown to like, I don't know if it's $50 or $60.
Yeah.
You start doing that when you're 40, it'll still grow and might be worth $20 or something like that. But that, you know, dollar here, the impact of compounding over time, if you want to just set yourself up in the future, and it's not huge sacrifices you need to make.
To save a little here and there.
Yeah, save steady on, early on, and then as you hit milestones that you set for yourself, then you can spend more on doing this, that, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it will set you up to have the freedom you want later.
This next question, to frame it a little bit, is sometimes the frustrations of an older generation are the same as the older generation before them. So, you know, oftentimes people will be like, oh, you know, the music is, that's a common one. That's a similar one. So this one, with the understanding that this is kind of like a rite of passage that some generations just go through, but to see if it is or isn't, and if it isn't, just kind of if this is a common negative component of my generation and younger, is delayed gratification and maybe the willingness to embody the delayed gratification, because that was one of the things that I actually talked with Sam about with you, and then wrote down as one of the things that I admire greatly and that you had just mentioned is that your ability for delayed gratification with high intention is amazing. Whereas I look around sometimes myself as well, and then folks even younger than me, I see that, hey, that you really aren't thinking that much to the future. And maybe social media is compounding, folks who are thinking more in the moment than thinking for the future of selves. So all of that to frame then the question is, do you think that my generation, maybe 30s and 20s, have more of an issue with thinking for the future, whereas thinking for the now?
I'm going to say maybe. And again, it goes back to, as you said, social media creates these distortions of what and how people really lead their lives. But if I'm not mistaken, there are more younger people today who suffer from a level of loneliness, or in some cases depression. And those people could also be the same people that are posting some like fabulous image of being somewhere doing something, or some new unboxing of something. So I think it also, social media might also distort that there's more of that going on than there might actually be. Because there were plenty of people when I was growing up that were spending beyond their means, had big mortgages, lots of debt, and the reality of younger generation today faces higher costs to do things than I did, right? You used to be able to work a summer job and save enough money to pay your tuition, go to the University of Wisconsin.
That's insane.
What summer job are you going to have now that's going to help you pay for a year of, So the hurdles are higher for today's generation to afford some of the things that we used to be like, oh yeah, I did this all summer long and I was able to pay, or your parents could help pay for that, and it wasn't some massive part of their own paycheck that they could help supplement your tuition cost. So, I think there's a bit of apples and oranges comparisons on that. But even, regardless, the lesson of thinking, hey, I can still have a good time. I can still do lots of unique and fun things, but I can also kind of set my sight towards the future, that you can do that too, even with those big hurdles.
Yeah. What do you think are the main ingredients for a good life? That's such a personal thing. So I have my version of what I think my good life is, and there could be plenty of people that are like, oh man, I wouldn't want to do that. I don't want to be that guy. But I think, a connection with family is a big one, if not the biggest one. And that family starts potentially with a partner, maybe not, but then with siblings, nieces, nephews, cousins, whatever. Like that is such a huge thing. I'll probably come back to that, but so that's a huge thing. And then, having a circle of friends and the connection with those friends. You don't need and again, for some people, a big circle is super important to them. Other people, hey, I want a smaller circle, but I want deeper ties. So I'm a smaller circle, deeper ties person. So I have some friendships that I've had for a really long time. They mean a ton. And so versus, hey, I got a whole bunch of friends and I do that's not me. And then having professional and relationships you build over your work life or your family life or your kid's school life, and having those connections they're there. Those are people, they may not be like super, tied to week in and week out, but boy, if you needed something, they'd probably give you a hand. And to me, that's the quality of a good life. Sounds like the thread is healthy and strong relationships.
Yes.
Yeah, they require an investment from you.
Right. Yeah. And again, who knows? It'd be interesting to. Well, actually, while I was working, they used to do 360 reviews, So you'd have the 360 or 180.
I think it's 360. If I remember, I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about. Yeah.
So it's basically where the people
Yeah.
that you work for, the people that you work alongside, the people that may work and report to you, the people may work associated with, kind of review what you bring to the relationship and to the company and how you communicate, how you do things. Those are invaluable. And honestly, it'd be nice if people could figure out how you do that in real life.
Yeah. Well, you gave me some advice. Maybe it was in 2021 or something, and I was just asking. It was something on how I can get better, and then you giving me advice on something like this is like, well, find some people who you really trust and ask them for. Maybe you could say it better than me, but it was essentially what you do great, what you need to improve on, and then you kind of
what you should stop doing.
What you should stop doing. Yeah. Really cool things. And
did you do that?
No, I didn't, because you would have been the person I would have asked.
Dude,
I know. Yeah, I can't remember. I really liked it, but no,
You should. I would recommend still do that.
Yeah.
Go. Pick. Hey, I'm going to ask my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask 4 of my friends. I'm going to ask 4 of my cousins.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask 4 of my former coworkers. I'm going to say, hey, you guys, just send them an email and say, hey, I'm just looking for your feedback as I look at who I am, how I'm perceived, because a lot of it's really perception. And I'd like to answer these and be honest.
Yeah.
And I will not be, and you have to take this deep down. I will not be offended because I am asking you for this feedback.
Yeah.
And send a note and put those 3 buckets.
Is it? Yeah.
What is it that I do that I could do more of? Mm-hmm. What is it that I do that I should just keep doing that and being and how I am? And then what are the things that I do that I should stop?
Just stop outright. Yeah.
And ask them. And you will find some deep personal insights that you'll be like, I never knew that.
Wow.
It's huge. And yeah, I'll share a work one that happened with me. I had been a senior vice president for like a dozen years, and I wanted to become an EVP like so bad. And actually at one point I asked my boss, there was an EVP opening, it got filled, had a merchandising, it got filled by somebody else. I was like, I thought my background, my results were good. I had similar responsibilities, and somebody else got the job, and it happened again. So I actually went to this person, and it's an advice of a good friend of mine, and I said to him, so, hey, if every EVP here would get hit by a bus, would you make me an EVP? And he's like, And basically I got my answer, no. And so, it was like, okay, I got this quick insight that, okay, this person does not see me being able to get to that level, which was super insightful. And I had to go through my internal thing of, okay, do I want to stay with this company? Should I just try and leave? Because, that's where I want to get to, but I'm not going to get there. And for a while I was, kind of pissed. And I can't believe it. Look at my results. I've had some of the best results. And long story short, eventually that person left the company. And then I got a new boss. And in this process of the 360s, I got feedback that when a new idea comes forward, I tend to ask a lot of questions. Well, how would you do this? How would you do that? And my inquisitiveness, which I was asking those questions to thinking, how would you go about solving how to bring that to fruition, was actually seen by my peers and my boss oftentimes as me putting up the obstacles that we couldn't do that. Because I'd been with the company a longer period of time. So they were thinking my questions were not of embracing how do you bring it to fruition, or frankly, maybe poking some holes in, hey, have we thought about this? But they were seeing me as putting up the barriers to wanting to support and bring something forward. And when I learned that, it was truly a light bulb moment after spending 20 plus years in a career where those characteristics had driven a lot of success, they were the ceiling to me being able to move forward. So I was like, okay, I'm going to change my approach. So when those ideas started to come forward, I would, instead of being like, well, how would you do this or how would you do that? I'd be like, oh man, that's a fantastic idea, and talk about celebrating why that was a good idea, et cetera. And then after having some time, then insert the questions of, well, have you thought about this? And it was a game changer. And then I had a new boss, and an opportunity came, and I presented why I should be considered for that opportunity, and I eventually got it. But it was an aha moment that characteristics that had made me successful were actually, in how I was using them, were a barrier for me being able to take the step forward.
That's pretty incredible. And
so asking for the insight, you might not like some of what you read and hear, but it's super, because it's all about perceptions.
Yeah. Because that's so interesting to hear, because one of the traits that I admire, that Aunt Sally was saying that she admired as well, was your ability to surface questions that do allow folks to think in a non-critical way, which I think you're very good at that. But the perception that was held by others was that some of them it wasn't the most embracing thing, and so just switching that, and it never would have come if you didn't ask that question.
Yeah, and actually I'll go back. The specific question was, Chris embraces and champions change and innovation. The people that I worked with and that worked for me, gave me a 5 out of 5. Man, he does that all the time. He is always pushing forward. The people that I worked for and worked alongside that were at senior levels above me gave me a 3. And honestly, if you want to move to the next level, average in that thing was no good. Meanwhile, the people that worked for me every single day, that really knew me, that really saw how I brought things to life, saw a totally different version, and through their perceptions that I created. Right? So it was me creating their perceptions. So having to own that and saying, okay, what do I need to understand so I could do things differently and present things differently? It's huge. And we all could do that. We all could do it in our personal relationships. So
you've had an incredibly successful business career, corporate career. I'm not sure how you define it, but is this one of the recipes in order to go to different levels? Because I'm curious, kind of, what are the biggest challenges as you go from one level to the next? Because it's a whole, there's a common saying, new levels, new devils. Oh. And so, as well, maybe that applies. But
yeah. New levels, new devils. I like it. Okay.
Yeah, Mac always tells that one to me. And so is this one of the components, or one of the main components of what's the biggest challenge, I guess is a better way to ask it, of going from senior president to EVP?
So in every level, you're from a growth in management is, the reality is, as you grow as a manager, you're going to quote unquote do less and lead more. Mm-hmm. And so learning how you do that, and also while you're doing that, your shift from I may be developing some strategy and then implementing strategy is I'm working to figure out how to develop strategies and also develop good strategies. Ferdinand Porsche said, change is easy, improvement is far more difficult. And people love change. So as you grow and lead and take on higher levels of responsibility, you're actually doing less, but you need to lead more. And you also have to lead an effective strategy from a corporate environment standpoint.
That is improvement and not just change.
Yeah, not change. Change for the sake of change is like
a distraction.
Busy work, right?
Yeah, and it sets you back even further than the
change or your best case, you're just running in place.
Yeah.
Worst case, you go backwards.
Yeah, it's pretty. I faced that when I was at Bounce, where I went from being a individual contributor,
right,
doing that, and then going into management, and that was probably the hardest thing to go from is stepping into the managerial thing, because then in many ways, I'm not sure if you faced the same thing, but it was like I didn't feel as I was contributing as much by not. I guess then that indicates like I didn't do the mental switch of just strategy implementation and leadership is just as impactful as the day to day of
yeah, and
execution.
honestly, when you move to that next level, it actually is. If you think about it, it is more. It should in your mind be more impactful, because if you're saying and you're working with a group, a team, a leader of a smaller part of the business, and you listen to their strategy and you help them partner, build or develop that strategy, and you take and you grow a business to the next level, that's like super rewarding, because you kind of already know you can do it. If you now know you can help develop other people to do it, that's like super. The reward from coming from that, from seeing newer people of the company or people that are growing within the company achieve success and grow, is like way more fulfilling than 6 years ago I used to do that myself.
It's like components of parenthood in some ways, of being able to guide someone to those next levels.
Right. Yeah.
Do you have any highlights from your corporate career that really stand out as things that you fought for, that you're proud of?
Oh boy. Well, it's when in my last role, I was the head of merchandising for women's apparel. The business at the company had struggled for a couple of years. Lots of new ideas were being tried, and actually women's apparel, and people that know me fairly well, especially that might know me locally, would be like, Chris Candee does women's apparel? Like what? Yeah, there's a long story there. But yeah, it'd be like women's apparel, because, and even for one of my times I was trying to get to another level, like the guy who said no, even if everybody else got hit by a bus, he wouldn't put me in that job, as he didn't see my merchandising skills as, well, as a leader, you're not the person saying, I think the change in women's bottoms to, the leg flare is changing and we're moving to low rise and, hip, and, you're not the person picking. If you are, you're screwed. If you're the person that thinks you're going to pick the assortments for your customers, you need to be leading the team of people that are going to be picking the assortments for your customers and asking the questions to those people. Anyway, I got that. I basically had been heading up the home and footwear area. The business had struggled for a couple of years. The person that had been leading it had not had success in turning it around. And that person left the company, and basically the CEO of the company asked, would I be interested in, would I take that role on? I'm like, I'd wanted that job a couple times in my career, and I took it. And within a year, we had implemented strategies to get the business back to positive comp store sales growth, and had stopped. Even if it's a 1 or 2% decline, you're going the wrong way. But we had changed the direction. We had positive sales growth. We had improvement in turnover. We had improvement in gross margin. And they had a vision and sort of a runway of how we could see the business continue to grow and evolve. And I was able to get that accomplished in a year, which was, and it was a $4.5 billion business. So it was a big business to be able to make that change and get everyone who touched it, because a big business like that is touched by many people, both externally and internally. That was probably like my highlight. And there were things along the way of brand evolutions or people, so that definitely was one. I'll come back to a people one.
Yeah, no, I really like that. It's pretty remarkable to have that much of an impact across a massive organization. And it was, I think, when you were there. And is it $4 billion for all of Kohl's, or is that just for the women's?
No, the women's business was $4.5 billion. The company was about $19 billion.
That's
so it was
incredible.
About a quarter of the company.
And how many people were involved in the women's apparel at the time?
probably 300 because you had our own buying team, you had a product development teams based on the East Coast, you have external vendors, national brands, et cetera. So there are a lot of people, and it's not like, right, and in a business that size, a third of the businesses were maybe running well and effectively, a third of the businesses were okay, and a third of the businesses were really struggling. So it's trying to address all three of those, but we had adjusted the game plan to what we could do to get women to say, yep, I want to buy my clothing from Kohl's.
And for folks who don't know, Kohl's, who may be abroad, is nationally distributed in every major city.
Yeah, it's a 1,100 store national retailer in the United States with a e-commerce business that probably represents about 20% of its volume. Maybe it's larger now. I'm guessing it's larger now.
This might be too into the weeds of the problem analysis, but did the challenge with the different businesses depend on region? Like, was it West Coast stores are doing better than East Coast, or was it more?
Yeah, it was a national. It was at the end of the day, does your product assortment and price offerings and what you market and how you market, does it align with what your customer is looking for and wanting? Mm-hmm. So it was not super complicated. It was like, okay, do we have what she is looking for every day, and are like, can we be, is a safe and comfortable, whether it's a trip to our website or a trip to a store, can she go there with confidence that she's going to find something that she uses and wears every single day? And then can she find things that she's going to use 5 out of 7 of the days? And then can she find things that she may wear for special occasion? And fulfilling those goals across a pretty diverse, right? Because a department store appeals to a much broader base, customer base than a single specialty store. So my prior career before I was at Kohl's was with the Gap, which is it's 3,000 square feet of retail space aimed at a casual lifestyle customer, which versus a 75,000 square foot store aimed at the family. So anyway, it was trying to address and target, do we have the assortment? Are we telling the story of what we have to marketing, both digitally and print and broadcast? And then is the pricing equation competitive in a super competitive environment?
Was one of the problems to switch directions maybe like a sunken cost thing where there was so much merchandise that wasn't really selling that you kind of have to say, hey, we this isn't working, and then is there an attachment to try and not lose that stock of merchandise? Is that something that comes up, or?
Well, I mean, in retail, almost every bit of merchandise is aging. It's aging the moment it gets in the store. Mm. It's aging both from a style standpoint, and it's also potentially aging from a seasonality standpoint. So, tank tops, if you have tank tops and the wrong type of tank tops, and it's cold, you're finding the price to make it go away. It's super hard. So, you need to get rid of the old inventory, but frankly, more importantly, this setting, okay, what do we want to bring in? You're making decisions that are typically 4 to 6 months to the future. So you can say, hey, I want to do this, but the moment you are implementing your strategy to the moment the customer can experience the strategy is 4 to 6 months away. So it's how do you understand and communicate when you're starting to hit milestones that are going to show the signs of success? Because usually in most companies, the implementation of strategy and the seeing signs of success, there's a lag, and along that lag time, the doubters come in, even your own personal doubt of, okay, was that the right strategy? And so sometimes the implementation of your strategy to the time it could come to fruition, people are changing their strategy already and saying, it's not working. Well, have you actually had the opportunity to see it evolve and come to fruition, and your customer come to say yes and vote on it? And oftentimes companies will think this is a strategy. They don't see the success early on, and they start tweaking it, changing it, and the customer is suddenly like 3 months later, like, wait, I kind of liked what was happening. So that also is something to watch out for.
How do you maintain, long-term focus with all of those components, the external and the internal doubts?
Yeah, I think you have to find milestones along the way that are indicators of success or failure, and you need to articulate them in advance. Hey, these are the signs of what I think success will look like, and then be measuring and saying, yeah, this is what's happening, and then understand what's happening, and either if it's really good or if it's bad, owning it or exploiting it.
There's another thing that I think is interesting with apparel, in that it seems, now that I've been alive for 30 years, what I've kind of seen is shifts in trends where I've seen it at least twice happen. And I remember we had a conversation maybe when I was like 20 where we were talking about this. And it seems that what was uncool 10 years ago now always for some reason becomes cool like today.
Yeah.
And it happened, I think, when I was 20. What was cool was these neon, super bright things that were just obnoxious, and it was like the coolest thing to wear. But 10 years ago that was kind of corny and dorky. And then now today, what is trendy and cool seems to be these like heavy metal lettering. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
like
okay.
Heavy metal lettering type things. And so, when I see what folks are wearing when they're 20 to 25, which it feels like, from what I understand, is that they kind of influence a huge amount of like the pop culture trend.
Yeah.
So is that a common thing of that something from whatever is uncool 10 years ago is guaranteed to be cool?
Should you plan ahead and say that's going to be cool in 10 years? I'm going to save that. You want to save that jacket you have, don't you? You're like, I'm cool again.
Yeah, exactly. Is this?
I mean, there is definitely a cyclical type, thing to fashion, and I think it's also, and what's trend and what's on trend. I think it's the speed of trend is so much faster, right? Because of social media and the way people can somebody who is people, get inspired by, wear something or do something, and that can cycle through super quickly, and it can also cycle out also super quickly.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that is unique today, and again, this has been true, I think, for a long time, but not to the degree, is that the breadth of fashion, and that you can buy any type of jean you want now, right? You can go skinny, low rise, you can go loose, you can go baggy, you can go high waist. You name the combination. In denim, for example, you can probably find it today at retail. And for some people, that is totally on trend. And other people would be like, oh my God, I can't be, they're wearing that. Because I think there's so many different types and styles that people wear that it's not as narrow as it used to be, that something is on trend or off trend, which is good, I think.
Yeah, it is. And the fact, and the other thing that was coming to mind was, on the opposite end of, the fast pace of chasing trends, it seems that there's some things that are kind of, there's a style that always remains, where there's certain, I guess, like linen pants and kind of nice shirts for some reason have always been in style since the 90s or whatever.
Yeah.
Like the kind of Harvard look, I guess, is what you call it.
Yeah.
No, it's really
preppy.
The preppy look. Yeah, exactly. That doesn't seem to change, and no, the breadth of that is interesting. So you had mentioned this before we went on to this deep dive, is that there was a proud moment from business standpoint, not personal standpoint.
Oh yeah. So I was at a divisional level. So basically I oversaw a subset of the business. So it had 5 or 6 buying teams within it. Each buying team had $250, $300 million in sales on. Anyhow, I had an individual working for me, directly to me, that their business had been struggling for a year, and every idea that we were putting forth and that they were working towards, it was struggling to come to fruition. And I was super frustrated, and I actually had said, hey, we need to let this person go. And my boss was like, yeah, we need to let that person go. And that person's boss also said, yeah, that person needs to go. And so I was going down this path of communicating to this person, well, this is where you're falling short. These are what you're doing. And in all seriousness, people in a corporate environment, if senior leadership decides it's your time to go, the amount of pressure that they will put upon that individual can be immense. And there's plenty, right? There's plenty of things all of us do every day that you could just point to and say, oh, you didn't do that right. And this individual was clearly struggling. The business was not succeeding. Their team was not cohesive and working effectively together. And so I was on the path, okay, we're gonna let this person go. And I was down that path, and then for whatever reason, a senior person in the company was like, yeah, they were concerned about, hey, are we putting too much pressure on some people? Or they basically said, yeah, you can't let that person go. And I was like, oh my God, I've been on this path for this person. And this was a super instructional moment for me, because I was like, oh, okay. This person is clearly underperforming to the balance of the team. They're weighing our total division's results down. And now I'm told I can't let that person go. And so I have to change the direction of this person quickly, in that instead of getting them to think about, hey, I need to leave this company and go find a new job, I need to get this person to be really successful, which, right, it seems like those are totally opposite things. And they are.
Yeah.
And so I literally had a meeting with this person and said, I want you to succeed. You're capable of succeeding, and these are what success would look like. And this person literally, over the next 6 months, turned leading that team and the business around, and ended up being a high-level performer for the next 10 years. And frankly, it all came down to that they had the confidence that I believed in them and that I would support them. And it was one of those, it feels like a Captain Obvious thing. Like, oh yeah, people, but that small bit of literally directly saying, I believe in you, and I want you to succeed. I'm not thinking a lot of us as bosses or leaders say that to people directly. But when you say that to someone who is struggling, or maybe their performance is okay, but it's not what they have the potential to be, them understanding that level of confidence that you have in them it was incredible. And and frankly, it made me rethink the interactions I have with the people that work with me, and being able to give them positive feedback and positive levels of support, especially when I saw that they were down, or they had, right, we all have misses in our business, or we make a mistake, we have a tough meeting. Reaching out with an email, a quick conversation, whatever, can be such a change in how they show up, that it will transform how your organization works.
That's incredible.
And so I still think about that moment to this day, because I remember when I walked into my boss's office and he said, yeah, we're not letting that person go. I thought I was 2 weeks away from delivering the, hey, you gotta go. And then me like, okay, well, what am I gonna do? And what happened over time with that person as they led a business and a team to incredible levels.
They, when spoken, they always seem like they're, like you were saying, kind of Captain Obvious. But when you're in the trenches, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's so different, because a lot of things come into place where it's like, okay, hey, as you were saying that, it was interesting to reflect on similar things where I showed up and needed to show up better of leadership as well, where like if you're in that component, oftentimes maybe either consciously or subconsciously, the performance of that person underneath you is a reflection of you. And so sometimes it might be like, hey, I really need you to, start performing better. And so the communication is more harsh than it is positively encouraging, which the result clearly in this example is that when you take the latter, it has so many compounding benefits inside of it.
And it's okay to have like hard confrontations and again, I'm not an advocate, but if you demonstrate a level of frustration, but you do it on sparingly, people will know, okay, this is something that, that's really important to him.
This is definitely a no-no.
Yeah, or just, hey, and
a good one.
When I left Kohl's, one of my, and it's sort of interesting in that, to a degree, that's all now gone, it's behind you. But when I left, the notes that I got from people saying how when I led, led their area or worked with them, how it made them feel and how we could work as a team, it was super rewarding. So
I can only imagine. It's a cap on. How long were you at Kohl's for?
25 years.
25 years. 25-year cap on hard work. Do you have? I know that you were talking about collecting some thoughts and ideas on leadership, because it's, again, there are these things spoken that become like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. But when you're in the trenches, it's so much more difficult to maybe be reminded of those. Do you have a short list of things that you ensured or that you at least embodied when you were in leadership roles?
I'm not sure if I do, and well, I do and I don't. So number one, the role of communication is, and communication at every single level, and especially as a leader, is, you can't measure it, or maybe you can. I'm sure you can, but the impact of communication, of what you're doing, why you're doing it, what could I do differently, and one of the parts when I go back to when we were implementing the strategy to try and redirect the growth in the women's business was, right, people oftentimes when they're working on their big idea, they work on their big idea by themselves or maybe with a partner or two partners, and they work on it for 2 or 3 months, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, and then they do the big unveil and they share it with people. And right, that's super common. Like the big, they're working on it, they're going to share the strategy. Then all of a sudden the strategy gets shared, and along the way they put in a lot of details and structure. And when they share it, they share what's probably a pretty good strategy. But when they share it, they've already spent so much time on it, and they've built their vision, and their vision is so clear to them. And then when they share it, they get feedback from people, and people either are working for them, they work for, or they work with. And those people say, hey, have you thought of this? And the response is, yeah, I did, but we don't think that's as important. Or, yeah, we did, and we're not going to do that now. But they get a ton of really good information. But because they've been working on it for so long together before, or by themselves, before they did their big unveil, their receptivity to change is super low. And that is like the biggest mistake as a leader. And so one point I was speaking to a number of aspiring, we had a high potential VP group that I was asked to present to, and how and why did we bring our success to why did we turn it around? And I believe in this concept of share and align. So as you're developing strategy, rather than like, oh, I got to hold it, this is my big secret for the big unveil, I'm going to frame out an outline, maybe it's a page, and I'm going to share it with you, I'm going to share it with that person, I'm going to share it with the people that are going to help make it come to fruition. And I'm actually going to be an active listener and truly listen for feedback that could make it better. And then I'm going to take that, I'm going to revise the strategy, I'm going to tweak it, I'm going to change it, I'm going to share it again. And if you do that process of share and align, share and align, share and align, when you start putting your wheels in motion, you got two things. One, I think you're going to have a better strategy because you've taken in way more points of view than what you think is your most worldly one of your own. So you're going to have all these other points of view. And then way more importantly than that, you've got buy-in because these people invested their thoughts and time to read and listen to your strategy, give you feedback, and then they actually saw you used it. Who do you think is going to pull harder to drive that thing to the finish line? It's going to be the people that are like, hey, you know what? He listened on that and tweaked that part, and just listen to that. Or maybe he didn't change it, but now I know why he didn't do that. So that interactive communication, because communication is such a big old
it's
word.
Broad, yeah.
You know, it's so communication by far such a huge deal, but the real communication, which is active listening, exchange of ideas, development of an idea together, using lots of feedback. So as a leader, that is like by far number one. A sense of ownership. So, you know, my career was built around working for somebody else, you know, a company. A lot of my family they're entrepreneurs, and they have their own businesses, and have been successful at that. What I have seen is that in a corporate environment, when you treat the business as it's yours, and I would tell this to assistant buyers, so they're now just coming up, they're now starting to have buying responsibility.
You told this to me as well.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
A sense of personal ownership. So yeah, you may be buying sunglasses. You know, you work in the accessories division, and you're the assistant buyer. You have sunglasses. I want you thinking about that. It's your business, so every result is yours, because when you're doing that, you're going to be the fastest to respond to what's working. You're going to be the fastest to respond to what's not working. You're going to have the difficult conversations. You're going to fight harder to bring something to fruition. And that sense of ownership versus, well, you know, they said no. And it is by far a characteristic of people that separates good from great.
Yeah, entrepreneurship still seems totally viable within a huge corporate structure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, you're going to run into, and even companies that have a high level of, you know, review, et cetera, and maybe at some point it's just like, okay, I feel like everything is a battle. And then, okay, I don't really feel like I can be an entrepreneur within this organization. But most companies allow it, especially in today where, you know, where manpower and how to get more with less is such a thing. So that sense of ownership is gigantic.
Yeah, it's such an interesting, just the duality of the two things that you had said, because the first one, leadership is selfless, and then leadership is extremely, there's an extreme accountability that must be taken, which, you know, kind of on the face of things as an early leader,
yeah,
I think the balance of those two is very difficult, because when you step into this being my own business, there's ego there. You know, ego is always something that people need to contend with. And so as you're, you know, owning the sunglass shop, you're proud of the things that you've done, but in order to go incredibly far, you need to do exactly what you were describing, which is getting a mutual or across the board buy-in which often means that your idea is the one that dies because it might not be the best thing. And so to embody both of those things is incredibly difficult, but necessary.
Okay, now I'm on my third. So I got communication, I have a sense of ownership. And then last I would say, and there's probably 5 more, but curiosity.
Yeah.
Because, and my definition of curiosity is whatever your business you're doing or whatever you're doing, right? You're so locked in to it, whether you're working 50 hours, 60 hours, 40 hours. You are so tied into your 4 walls of your business that sometimes you don't slow down and look around at everybody. And when working in retail, like, who's your competition? Well, to a degree, everybody's your competition. So being able to look around everybody, and whether that's walking through a Walmart, walking through a dollar store, walking through, Neiman Marcus, going to really interesting online, that you will see ideas and innovation and things that people are doing that are like, that's pretty interesting. And how do you then apply it to your business? And just a sense of that because you clearly never have it all figured out, right? Even though some of the most successful CEOs and leaders of companies or leaders of business run into a stumbling block because they like, hey, it's working. I mean, it's continuing to work. I'm continuing to grow my business. But they aren't looking around and saying, okay, what's next, or what could I be doing differently, or what else is out there? I think is big.
Yeah, I want to give an observation on curiosity, because I think it's a challenging thing to cultivate, but I think the recipe in order to be able to cultivate more curiosity is like a strong sense of self, and possibly being grounded. And so for someone who would be listening, that's like, okay, how do I become more curious? Curious, yeah. But I think that the makeup of the life that you've built is the scaffolding that then allows for this. Okay, hey, how do you do this? Because it does imply that you don't know something about that. And so I think often people, I know I struggled with this for a long time, is that no one wants to look dumb. That's not a fun thing to be placed as, like, I'm not stupid or whatever. But in order to do that, then all of these things, family, relationships of community, purpose-driven work, ownership, communication. I'd add like physical health in there as well, which is, we haven't discussed it, but you maintain this pretty well with farm labor. This is your gym every day. And so kind of having all of those things enable for curiosity in a setting that might not be a place that you feel 100% comfortable in, if you're like a listener thinking, okay, how do I be a more curious leader? I'd argue. I agree. That's observation.
And honestly, curiosity doesn't need to take a lot of time, right? Curiosity can be just stepping out of what is my normal. I wake up, I live my day, I go to bed. What path am I going to take differently that day? And it could be, I spend my first hour reading the news online. Okay. And this is especially apparent today, right? People just go to their sources of news so they get to hear what they want to learn about. And the reality is you're missing out on a broader, different thing. So like, hey, when do you put that aside and either read something different or go somewhere different, or, depending on whatever your thing is.
Yeah. It's, that definitely seems like a challenging thing to do, to kind of get out of your own vacuum. But then even relating it is, if someone were to ask you a question about an event in your life, your answer is not going to be, it's just like there's complexity for the decision making. So, for a world event to happen, then there's going to be multiple different angles. Mac and I often say that, is that when discussing something, it's like there's this version, then there's this version, then in the middle, there's something that's the truth.
Correct.
And so broadening it. And see, I think this is a good segue, because what I was going to say is just an observation on I think just the success that, like, I'm picturing from the corporate world and from the business world is so well connected to the story of that you had from your wrestling coach to then how I've seen you problem solve to then understanding how you found success, especially in the last big success with women's apparel. And it seems to be contrary to what I've observed a lot of other people, is that when there is a task and something at hand, that like no matter what, it is going to be solved, and that is just the obsession rather than the problem. And I've seen it many times. So we've I can't remember the exact thing that we were doing in 2020, but it was something akin to us building the staircase at Newcastle, where like problem would come up.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, well, how'd you figure out how to do this? And you said, I don't know. You know, kind of just doing it. But it came up time and time again. I was like, what the hell? Because before working with you on projects around here, I always saw you as the guy who knew everything. And then when I was with you, I was like, oh, this guy, he knows everything, but he doesn't.
He's just making crap up.
But he's making stuff up. I was like, wait a minute. Like this is success. This is what it means. Is that it's like, hey, no. Like the problem is something to focus on, but not as something to like over obsess over, to the detriment of the goal, which is building the staircase, or it's getting the goods to the customer.
Yeah.
And you know, those kind of things. So just an observation I wanted to make as then segueing, but I don't know if you had anything else to comment on that.
Solving challenges or accomplish. You can approach it. I'm solving a problem, or I'm accomplishing a goal. Right? Am I building my song? Right? There's lots of ways you can slice it, but the reality is there are lots of different ways you can do it. There's the and people love it's smarter, not harder. At the same token, harder is actually can be pretty good sometimes, because harder, you're going to use some innovative tools and approaches to get something accomplished. Because frankly, the easier way, you just don't have you don't have the resources for the easy.
It could be different tools, could be different.
Yeah, could be a financial thing.
Yeah,
and so there's a saying that I love: cheap, fast, and accurate. You can have two, but you can't have all three. That's right. Cheap, fast, or accurate.
Yeah.
And so you can do something cheap and fast. It's probably not going to be accurate. You can make it fast and expensive. Probably going to be more accurate, right? So you can go through that cycle, and that's how you solve things. So the more you try some different things, the more I believe you can sometimes open up your eyes to think, okay, well, how could I solve this? And somebody else may look at it and say, like, that's the dumbest way I've ever seen it, but it works. And I'm sure I do plenty of those. But more often than not, you actually can come up with some pretty decent ways to get something accomplished.
Yeah. But I think that it goes back to what Aunt Sally is saying, is that you just get shit done, which is the imperative. And like whereas I think a lot of people get stuck in the analysis, and like myself included, where like you kind of just saying like, and I was just thinking kind of what is the thought process that gets to that? And something came up where a comedian, Louis C.K., talks about this thing where it's like everybody searches on Google, what's the best toothbrush?
Right.
And it's like the best toothbrush. What do you mean? Like it's just a toothbrush. There are maybe layers to it, whatever. But a toothbrush just cleans the teeth in a very basic thing, which is like bristles and whatnot. But you don't need this hyper crazy thing. And so people fixate maybe too often on being like, no, but what is the right thing? What is the best thing? What is that? When in reality,
Yeah. So this is right. They're cliche because they're true.
Yeah.
It's about progress versus perfection.
Yeah.
That right. It's the, hey, if I decide to run a marathon, it's okay if after 19 miles you start walking. But you're still right. You're still moving forward. Versus, if I don't run as fast as I can, I'm never going to get this marathon done. No, actually, if you walk, you're still moving yourself forward. And I personally, when I do like I go with a hike with my buddy, and like we're doing a really hard hike, I just kind of think, just as long as we're moving forward here and we're safe or whatever, it's about thoughtful forward progress versus it being perfect.
This makes me think of another example of how perfect is not the best. There's a guy maybe in like the 90s or something, maybe that's not the right year, but there's a guy who's really interested in physics who was in the NBA.
Okay.
And the standard NBA free throw, as we all know, is shot overhand like this. But he thought, okay, hey, what if I took a different approach to shooting the free throw? What would be the most probable way to consistently get the ball in the basket? And he realized that it's underhand.
Okay.
But you look like a freaking moron.
Yeah.
But this guy, he had some insane free throw percentage because he was unafraid to shoot and do like this different method. But then what is visually best is looking cool or whatever.
The push.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's just an interesting thing that there's different layers to it, and just I think a lot of people get caught in the analysis of
versus what will it take to get it accomplished and continue to move forward.
Yeah, continue to move forward even on the hike.
Yep.
So a couple questions here that I just wrote out that are always fun. Who do you admire?
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
I just think of as a country, we were in such a difficult time of states versus federalism, slavery versus non-slavery, and I'm sure, right, the guy probably has all kinds of faults, but I find reading about him super fascinating in that he would take tons of input and listen and write the team of rivals idea that he actually included his opponents in his cabinet, and that he brought those people in to his circle to help him accomplish his goals of keeping our country together and eventually, right, evolving on, putting an end to slavery in the United States, and was super self-deprecating. Probably had a sense of humor that would be not allowed today, because I think it could actually be somewhat crude. But anyhow, I find it super interesting that he is a person, and the role he played is one guy in helping us work through a super, super difficult time in our nation's history that we still struggle with to a degree, but who was able to actually navigate that. I admire him. I've admired, I've admired coaches in our community that just give so much of their time and energy to our kids for, not a lot of financial reward, but the impact they have on shaping lives is just unbelievable. I have two coaches, Sarge, Mr. Marking, and then my cross-country coach, Mr. Vollmer, who I'm still a friend of today, who, and I was like, oh, that was Mr. Those are my, teachers, whatever. But the amount of people that they have impacted positively through their encouragement and support is incredible. So I think there are so many people you can find things. I admire my mom hugely. She got divorced and started navigating a new life after 9 children. Back when getting divorced, she got divorced in, I guess, 71, 72. When that was super hard at that time, and farm had debt, and there are all kind of issues. And her ability to navigate that and try to be a positive influence on her 9 kids. That it's kind of amazing for this tiny woman who had physical challenges from arthritis, et cetera. So there's tons of people I admire.
How has Muma, my grandma, your mother, Muma, as we call her.
Yeah.
How has she influenced your life?
Boy, hugely. Again, because the divorce or whatever. She went back to work at the age of 46 or 47. Right? She'd been a mom for 26, 27 years, and raising 9 children. And then after my parents got divorced, she went and became a bookkeeper at a car dealership to make money to help us have groceries, and pay for the bills at the farm. And so she didn't have lots of time, but mom, and then as mom got older, my mom is a sounding board to reflect things on or whatever. And I always perceived she allowed me to reflect things with her, that she was truly thinking about for my best interest. So when I was 27 or 28, something like that, I had been living and working in Chicago. The company I was working for got sold, so I didn't have a job, so I was trying to figure out what to do. And one of my options, I had a couple options. I could stay in the Midwest. I had a couple job offers in the Midwest. I had a job offer in Texas, and I also had a job offer in California. And I never had thought I would leave the Midwest. I kind of had this vision of what my life would be like. And but the Midwest or the California thing was kind of interesting, and the job was an interesting opportunity. Never really spent any time there. But anyhow, my mom encouraged me to pursue that and to go there, not knowing, who knows, maybe she did know. That, hey, would I go to California and stay there? Would I come back? Anyway, her being there to counsel and share a thought or advice, and hey, you could go do that, you're in this position, and being always there. So that was one way my mom has influenced me, that like, how do you be there to share thoughts and to also not do them that steer towards your own objective? Maybe she didn't want me around. Could be.
I doubt that.
Yeah, I don't know. But and then the other was my mom, or our mom. My siblings were here. It's our mom. But I jokingly, I didn't jokingly. It was honest. I referred to her at her memorial service as a Renaissance woman, in that she could do anything. She was 4'11". She
spoke French.
She,
could shoot a gun.
She could shoot a gun, could play tennis. She could ride horseback. She liked fast cars.
Likes convertibles.
She loved to read, was interested in politics. She was aware and was really wise financially. And she helped steward the farm through challenging times so that it could still be here for our family to go forward.
She could also talk to anyone.
Yeah, she could talk to anyone. She treated everyone with respect. She didn't swear a whole lot. If she did swear, you knew you were in a lot of trouble. She was firm in her discipline and her expectation. You knew what was expected of you. It was tough to get her approval. Oh yeah, you did a great job. She didn't heap on praise. At the same token, I never felt she was overly critical either. She was sort of this, hey, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to have successes. And, if you got an attaboy, you were like, man, But at the same token, you didn't get lots of oh, that was really dumb. So, yeah, she was pretty incredible that way. And I try to take those traits, okay, how do I incorporate that into who I am, what I do?
There's often things in life that you really can't prepare for, like the death of a parent. What was that like to lose Muma?
Oh, God. Super hard. So I'd lived in California for 6.5 years, and I came back to the Midwest. And then for the last 11 years of my mom's life, I actually lived nearby. So I lived, a mile away. And then as she was getting older, she would need some help. So our mom was fiercely independent. And God forbid anyone who ever thought she should live in assisted living or have someone live with her. So that was not in her game card. And actually, at one point, as she was getting older, I just made a point of stopping in to her house in the evening on my way home from work. Did you need anything? And it would be a little of this and a little of that. Open something, put something, whatever. And one day, a couple years before she passed away, I was helping her with she had this it was all mental list that she had. And it was, hey, could you help me with this? And then as I was helping her, she said, I was thinking about, I think I actually do need assisted living. And I was like, what? And my mom had, I don't know if anyone would say, boy, Muma's really funny. But she had this dry sun, and I was like looking at her, and she said, yep, about 12 minutes a day. And that was literally how she was living her life, in that fiercely independent. When she needed, in her later years, she was using a scooter to get around the house. And eventually, on her own, decided she should stop driving. And then, frankly, on September 11th, she had an episode where she was disoriented, went to the hospital. And so it was on September 12th that she found out that cancer had metastasized, and she had, some X period of time to live. And it's one of those, your parents are going to pass. My dad had already passed away 11 years prior. That they're going to pass away, but it was like, hey, this is going to happen. And so hearing what the doctor said, I was with my sister Kate, Gay, and we then called our siblings and let them know the prognosis. And Mom wanted to be back home and be in the house, and things would just progress. And it was super hard. She did home hospice, where we were actually the caregivers. The night before she passed away, I was the one who stayed overnight, and so she was, working through the physical pains as the cancer was progressing. But in her mind, her mind was still, hey, is everything sorted and okay for the farm and for the family after she passed? So that was still a priority to her that she was thinking about in her last 24 hours. And then that morning, she got a sponge bath and, feeling fresh or whatever. And then that afternoon, I'd gone for a hike around the farm, just kind of have my mental space and just kind of reflect on things. And I was on the opposite side of the lake when somebody called me and said Mom had passed. And so yeah, I remember it vividly. But it was her passing, it was exactly how she had wanted to have her life and proceed. And she was very much a realist. She actually used to say, and she thought she'd live till she was 82. And then she was like, yeah, I made 82. And then she was like, oh man, I'm going to make it to 87. And she ended up being, I think, 3 days shy of making it to her 87th birthday. But she knew, at some point she's going to die. And one of the things that I frankly have taken to heart is and not to turn this into a dark conversation, but we're all gonna die, and we're all gonna. It could be like it goes back to the opening part of our conversation. What is so important to us that we're going to fray our relationships to those that we are closest to? Like, what is so important? Because at the end of the day, we're going to be gone. And then the longer we're gone, the more like our lives will have been behind us. And will that thing that I was so bent out of shape with, that sibling, that friend, that person, so great that I couldn't like just let it go. And I truly try to remind myself of that. And I'm sure I've got things that I hold on to that I should just figure out how to let go. But I do try to live the motto of, if there's an issue, address it. Have the conversation with the person in a polite, civil manner, and put it out there. And whether or not they accept it, take it, believe it, that's then beyond my control. But being able to say, hey, this is why, or I'm sorry, or hey, this frustrated me, I think it's the way to go, because man, in a minute we're gonna be gone.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the evening before Muma passed, so she was checking to ensure that everything was good with the farm, and she had left us with a vision that she had written for us, which we read before every family meeting. And with that understanding is how important is the farm in ensuring the vision of Muma to you?
So the history of the farm is, my parents bought it back in 1958. Probably not for a lot of money. It was owned by a canning company that grew peas and corn here. And there's frankly more wetlands and not really tillable land than there was like farmland. So I don't think it was probably super expensive way back then. And but they bought it as a place to come to, as their kind of their place, for the family to go. And we had a big family. And then eventually, 6 or 7 years after that, we moved here, and so it's our home. And then, so we moved here in 65-ish or something like that. And then by 71-ish, so within 6 years of moving here, my parents were heading towards a separation and divorce. And my mom's father thought that the farm was such an important place potentially for our family to somehow keep. So it could be an anchor place for all of us. So I'm sure my mom could have sold it, probably would have had some equity, could have bought a house somewhere. The other options for her probably would have been to sell the farm, and we would have moved back to Milwaukee and lived in Milwaukee. And we would have been closer to her family. So that was probably a real possibility. I wish I would have had this conversation with her. But anyhow, my grandfather said, hey, we should keep that farm. He helped pay off what had become a big mortgage that was on it. And so reduced the mortgage on it. And then it was my mom's responsibility to pay for the ongoing management and insurance and all the other things. So anyway, the keeping of the farm is a place for our family and friends to come together and connect, was the vision my grandfather had. And it was through his thoughts and caring for that he left that for my mom, and my mom nurtured it and got it to a place where it was healthier, better, whatever. And it changed and morphed over the years. It used to be a total playground and anarchy of, and it's funny, we had a party last year where there were families that had come here in the late 50s and early 60s. And they were like, oh my God, this place, like, it was incredible, like all the crazy things we did. So it served a purpose there, and then it evolved as we got older, and then now as our kids and our kids are here. But it's this place of connecting for our family. And it's also physically, beautiful natural resource place. And the older I've gotten, the more I've actually appreciated it for its just diversity and also what it could even be. So, right, old farmland becomes full of other stuff, and we've done things to kind of try to restore it back to what it might have been before. But it's such just a unique place for people to come together. And my mom, I think in one of the visions, that we are a family of strong character and personalities, and a very diverse, a wild group, but it's a place where everybody can come together and does come together. And yeah, there's friction, sometimes there are, but nothing like the amount of fun and connection that happens. And the connectivity that we have with our family, with such a diverse and geographically diverse group, is pretty unique. And it's here for people to be able to enjoy and use and support to a degree. But it's not a requirement. But it's there for you. And I think people, in times of their lives, it can be seen as a place as a refuge sometimes, or a place of connection, celebration, or mourning. It can be a lot of things.
Yeah, it has multiple different purposes.
Yeah.
I like how Muma wrote, we're a family of strong characters.
That's right. Strong characters, yes, exactly.
A very nice way of putting it.
Very nice way of putting it.
How do you hope to be remembered?
Boy, I hope as a good brother, father, grandfather,
uncle,
person that, cared about the people they were around, and, make things potentially better, have fun while you're doing it. When you actually first asked me about this, I think you'd use the term legacy. And I think legacy is such a funny word, because to a degree, in the span of time, we're here like this big. And so I actually don't think so much about legacy, because, perfectly frank, will your kids vaguely remember Uncle Chris? Maybe. Your kids won't. Or my kids, they'll remember, and maybe, oh yeah, remember that, or there'll be things, but at some point, like, that part's gone. So it's kind of about, like, what are we today? And if you're like, hey, I'm going to try and make, and I've worked harder on this as I've gotten older than I did earlier, right? Because we're all living our own. How do I build some of those connections today? That's kind of what you can do. And same when you're working. Like, hey, what's your legacy from your work? Well, if you walked in Kohl's now and you said my name, and you said raise your hands if do you know who that guy was? Maybe a third, maybe it's, I don't know. Would they be like, oh, what would you say? Would they have something? Some might, but over time, you go into the same room, you ask the question again. Even entrepreneurs, in all seriousness, Henry Ford, yeah, people kind of know about him, but even that, his reputation isn't like great.
Yeah, it's not shining.
So and he developed this. So I think it's, how am I living, working in the environment today? And if I do that with what I hope is respect, caring, honesty, you do that, you maybe impact people and make, that reflect on how they may choose to do things, maybe reflect how they live their life. And if you can have a positive impact on how they choose, that right only perpetuates, because they may then impact somebody else in their future. And it just ripples down, right? Because we're all creations of the people in front of us.
Yeah, I was going to expand on that last component, is that the the individual lives on through the example that they create, and then the idea of them is what gets passed. And so oftentimes when I talk about Muma, is the character traits that I do use to describe are, elegant, strong discernment, confident, very capable. And I was, of course, old enough to be able to build a relationship. My children, they'll certainly hear the tales of, what does it mean to be this strong, matriarchal figure, and she'll live on it. So the idea of someone through the example of how they live is almost more tangible than the person.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely missed the elegant part. That didn't pass on.
Not always, but sometimes.
Not always, sometimes, exactly. If I take a shower and I'm wearing clean clothes. Then
right. Yeah. Well, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on that we didn't discuss?
Today?
Yeah.
I would say that the opportunity that we all have to evolve, it's that we also have the sense in recognizing that other people can and will evolve too. Because, and we all lived in even going to the story of the farm, people live and they have their own snapshots or memories of what the farm is or was, and what it is or was to our family, and how those family members are who they are, and what role it played in who they are. But the reality is, that was then, and some of that of what was then it's just not anymore. And that could be good, the good or the bad, right? It's the people, that was the greatest thing. Like, yeah, that it might have been the greatest thing then, but that's not a reality today. Nor is hey, that person made some really bad decisions, and this applies to everything. That person made some really bad decisions, or I made some bad decisions, and that was like a snapshot. Like, if we say our lives are pretty short, the subsets within our lives, they're like tiny. And we, and unfortunately, we all can get hung up on, oh yeah, man, it really pretty sideways. If that person was sideways from the, age of, let's say 18 to 19, or 25 to 27, or 35, 2 years, 1 year, like we're talking 3% of your life. What has happened in the past does not define where you're going to tomorrow. So I think that with me is like super important, because I see people don't sometimes let go of that, and I think it holds you back.
Yeah, for others and for themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Right. I'm 62, and I'm still, the youngest, and I'm fine. And I'm fine with that. But at the same token, like, hey, dude, I'm 62. I walked a few miles now.
I am the youngest, but come on, man.
Yeah. And again, not so much age, but it's a funny thing that sometimes you're perceived, or you perceive yourself. It can also be right. Perceive yourself.
Yeah.
I'm the youngest. Well, yeah, I am. But if I feel strongly about something, I can still. Maybe then when I was 5, I couldn't speak up at the table, but now I can speak up at the table. Or and I was. Yeah, I think we all evolve so much that recognizing where you are today versus too much of where you were
it can inhibit you.
Yeah. So,
well, you've always been a mentor to me, and I've had so much fun hanging out with you.
And you a mentor to me.
Exactly. That's what was waiting.
Although I was thinking Connor might be replacing you.
I think he might. Yeah, he's my mentor too.
Yeah, he actually does most of the work now on things.
He does. Yeah.
So I'm now just learning from him. So you've been replaced.
Connor is the grandson.
Yes, Connor is my grandson.
Yeah.
And he's 15 going on 15.
Going on, is he 4? He's 15 going on
He's
16?
15. He's going to be 16.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Well, Thank you, Uncle Chris, for doing this. For
Thank
sitting down
you,
with me.
Robert.